So you've watched my previous video on how to prepare for an interview. You've done your research, you spent hours practicing and reviewing your performance, and you got your basics down like your hair, your attire, getting enough rest the night before, arriving early for the interview on the day of it, blah, blah, blah. Now you're at the company itself and you're about to be ushered into the interview room by the HR rep. What do you do the moment you enter the room? Now, before I answer that question, let me explain why this matters, in case you're wondering. First impressions count. Research shows that people make a decision about you within the first 30 seconds of meeting you, and usually they don't change their minds. From personal experience, I found that to be quite true. I once went for an interview at a TV ratings company, and the moment I met the hiring manager and I shook his hand, I got a certain vibe that it wasn't going to work out. I just felt it in my gut. So even though I did the interview reasonably well, I could tell that I was never going to get the call back. And I didn't. On the other hand, I've gone for interviews where I had a good vibe upon meeting the interviewers, and even though I didn't do quite as well during the interview itself, I fumbled here and there, they still offered me the job. So don't underestimate the power of making a good first impression. Usually the person, typically an HR rep, ushering you to the interview room will open the door for you. If not, if you're the one opening the door, make sure to knock first. Courtesy is so underrated. As soon as you open the door and enter the room, smile. But don't grin like the Joker, cause that's creepy, and then say hi or hello in a warm tone. Watch out for your tone, don't sound disinterested like this. Hi. Instead, say hi in a more upbeat tone and greet them with a good morning or good afternoon. Shake their hands if the opportunity calls for it. Make sure it's a firm yet friendly handshake. Don't grip too tightly as if you're trying to squeeze the blood out of their hands, but don't just hang on to their outstretched hand with a limp, almost lifeless hand of yours either. If your interviewers are already seated, and especially if they invite you to take your seat the moment you enter the room, then handshakes are probably off the table. In which case, just smile and greet them warmly before taking your seat. The moment you're seated, from my experience, the interviewers will usually start talking first. They'll usually thank you for coming and then talk briefly about the role and then ask you the question that I, and I suspect many others, personally dread. Tell me about yourself. Because it's just so open-ended, if you're not careful and you don't prepare well beforehand, you could end up going down all sorts of meandering paths about your career or even personal life. Whether the interviewers talk first or not, your response should be something along the lines of, "Thank you for inviting me for this interview. I appreciate the opportunity." And if they've already asked you the "tell me about yourself" question, or the "tell us why we should hire you," or "why do you want to work for us?" you could respond with something like, "I'm excited about the work the company is doing in the field of XXX. Personally, I see it having the potential to change people's lives. With my skills in XXX and experience in YYY, I'm confident that I have what it takes to excel at this role. Let me highlight my key strengths that would enable me to perform well here." And so it goes. You can take this, I guess it's a template of sorts, and tweak it according to your industry, the company you're applying to, the role you're eyeing, and so on. But in the less likely but still possible scenario that the interviewers don't start talking first and they just sit there and stare at you or at their laptops, which is possible, some interviewers like to test candidates that way, then don't wait till it's too awkward before you say something. A pause of 3 to 5 seconds in that scenario can seem like an eternity. What was it Einstein said about relativity? When you sit with a nice girl for 2 hours, you think it's only a minute. When you sit on a hot stove for a minute, you think it's 2 hours. That's relativity. But I digress. The point is to be savvy enough to read the room and be the one to open the conversation if you need to. A nice way to break the ice is to do something similar as I mentioned above. First, thank them for the interview. It's as simple as saying, "Thank you for inviting me for this interview. I appreciate the opportunity." And if that doesn't open them up, if it doesn't do the trick, then follow it up with, "I'm confident that I have what it takes to excel at this role. I'm happy to start with an introduction about myself and highlight my key strengths that would enable me to perform well here. Would that be okay with you?" By this point, they should be opening up already, but if they're still not, then you have a tough crowd and potentially a tough company to work for, in which case you might need to reevaluate if this is still the right role and the right kind of organizational culture for you. Alright, those were my tips based on my personal experience of what worked for me and what didn't on handling the opening few minutes of a typical job interview. There's obviously a whole lot more to the end-to-end interview process. For example, on how to conduct yourself during the interview, what to do and especially what not to do, how to maintain positive body language, how to answer difficult questions designed to unsettle you, what kind of questions to ask at the end of an interview, and so much more. I'm planning to talk about all these and more in my upcoming videos on this channel, so stay tuned. Hopefully you found this video useful. If you did, please hit that like button as it helps the channel to grow, and also the subscribe button to stay updated for more videos on career advice, tips, and support. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you in the next one. Bye for now.